horrible political witch hunts. A hell of a lot better time to live in. I seem to recall locking my door every day when I would leave for school. But good God, it was a skeleton key. All you had to do was go to the Five and Dime and buy one. So many things have changed. A lot of the things that have changed can be directly traced to technology. Some of them can just be traced to societal changes. I said that if I had my way, mothers would stay home with their children. And I think that mothers should stay home with their children, damn it. But I also think that women should have the right to work outside of the home and have a family. Who in the hell am I to tell somebody that, well, I mean, come on, you're a female. You'll do this. You'll do that. That's what you're supposed to do. Well, yeah, it is what you're supposed to do. But my God, you're also a human being. I said that men would open doors for women. And they would, if I had my way. But then, if I had my way, maybe women wouldn't be out there competing with men. I'll be damned if I'm going to open the door for, Dick Norman. Oh, he's my competitor. I might stand there and wait for him to open it for me. Positioning, it's very important. Keeping the other guy just a little bit below you. It's very, very important. I said that sexual roles would be more clearly defined if I were in charge. But you see, if I were in charge, I would somehow wave because it's about the only way I'd ever get to be in charge, I would wave my magic wand, and we would eliminate fairness and unfairness. Because it's not fair to ask me to give special preference to a competitor. That's not fair. But there was a whole different attitude toward women, as an example, 35 years ago. Countless times I got up from a seat on the bus and gave it to a woman. Sometimes a woman even my own age. Can you imagine that happening today? Well, hey, I'm an 80s guy. I've learned how to read the paper. When I find myself in a situation like that, I just bury my nose in that paper so I don't have to see him standing there. I'm an 80s guy, just like you are. See, I would favor all of these things that I talked about if they didn't directly apply to me. There we go. Ta-da! See, you're probably sitting back saying, yeah, Lassiter, yeah, I'd favor most of those things too, if they didn't directly apply to me. See, I'm terrified. I just don't know what in the hell's going on out there. I do not know what to do to make this a better place to live. And I frankly don't see anything on the horizon to change it. It's all happened so damn fast in just a few short years. I can explain everything that has gone wrong in this world. And I can directly trace blame right back to the root cause. The problem is that it all leads back to number one. And, of course, you, too. Now, I'll be damned if I'm going to call Masako Mister. I'll be damned if I'm going to stop being rude to perfect strangers over the telephone. I mean, come on, it's how I make my living. And before you come down too hard on me, it's how you guys get your jollies from noon to 3 most days of the week. Give me a break, huh? I don't know, maybe if I got more involved, Maybe when I saw some SOB in a Mercedes beating a 50-cent toll on the crosstown, maybe it would help if I somehow got involved and reported them to the police or something, But hey, come on, my time's valuable, and besides, they probably wouldn't believe me, and, God, I do have a radio show, I could give out their license plates number. Well, no, they might sue me. Besides, I did go through there once when I didn't have any change. Yeah, it was only once, man. And there were a couple of times when all I had, when the toll was 35 cents, all I had was 50 cents, and I threw in 2 quarters. It took 2 quarters back then, too. I mean, so it probably traded itself off, didn't it? Maybe if I got around to working with an organization like the Big Brothers or the Boy Scouts, like I'm always thinking about doing, maybe that would help. I'll have to give that some more thought. Hardly any of you people understand me. Hell, that's okay. I don't understand myself. Don't worry about it. Hardly any of you people have any idea as to how I got here. Not the job, but wherever it is in my head is. And I can't help you out. I don't understand either. But I think back. I have a handful of recollections, very specific little instances when I was 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, but I don't really have any vivid, complete recollections until I was about 7 or 8. And when I was 8 years old, my parents divorced, and we moved to Collingswood, and I've told you about that old guy that used to live next door, Mr. Russell. Mr. Russell was in his early 70s. Mrs. Russell was 70 when I first met them. And Mr. Russell and I became buddies. Remember, Mr. Russell loved to play canasta, but he cheated at 2-hand canasta, and his wife wouldn't play with him, so he taught me to play with him. And Mr. Russell collected coins, and he even turned a couple of bucks at it, I suppose, and he got me collecting coins, and he'd lend me books, and he'd even sell me some coins at a ridiculously low markup. And I remember once he put into my hand a 3-cent note. It was paper coinage from the Revolutionary period. And he put that in my hand. It was a piece of parchment all dried up, very, very fragile. It wasn't really worth that much. It was only worth a few dollars. And he got me to thinking about, wow. What did this money buy? Who had this money? And was this ever in George Washington's wallet? And he gave me a sense of history that continues to this day, a respect. And I remember once sitting in their living room. You see, whenever I would go over to Mr. Russell's house, and I would just go over. They literally lived next door. I would just go over and knock on the door. The Russells would get up and answer the door, and they would turn off the television. Yeah, 8, 9-year-old kid coming to visit. They'd turn off the television. And we'd sit there and talk, and I remember sitting there. They had 2 rocking chairs in front of the fireplace, and I loved rocking chairs. I still do. And I was sitting there rocking away, and slowly the chair, as rocking chairs have a tendency to do, turned. And I noticed for the first time, even though I'd been in the house numerous times before that, I noticed for the first time a photograph on the wall next to the fireplace of what I swear to you was one of the most stunningly beautiful women I have ever seen in my entire life. It was a color photograph. It had been hand-tinted. It was a very old photograph. And I said, "Who's that?" And it turns out it was a picture of Mrs. Russell. By the way, I don't remember their first names. I don't know that I ever knew them. It was just Mr. and Mrs. Russell. But anyway, I was told that it was a picture of Mrs. Russell. And I looked at Mrs. Russell, and I looked at the picture. I was 8 years old. Now, Mrs. Russell bore a very strong resemblance to, for those of you who are into Dennis the Menace, Mrs. Wilson. Mr. Russell didn't look like George Wilson. Mr. Russell looked a little bit more like Lloyd Benson, to tell you the truth. Very similar. But Mrs. Russell looked just like Mrs. Wilson. She was a 70-year-old woman, and she had gray hair, and it was pulled back in a bun, and she had a lot of wrinkles, and there were laugh lines and all kinds of lines in her face. And I looked at the picture and looked at Mrs. Russell and looked at the picture and looked at Mrs. Russell, and it gave me a sense for the first time in my life of age and youth. I was 8 years old. I was young. I was always going to be young. The Russells were 70. They had always been 70. They always would be, wouldn't they? And Mr. Russell and I would talk about world events, or we'd talk about collecting coins, or we'd talk about baseball. Mr. Russell would tell me about how he used to work in the banking system back in Morgantown, West Virginia, and what it was like during the Depression. He told me those things because I asked. But he also talked to me about nonsensical things, too. And the Russells never minded when my ball went in their yard and I would just hop over the fence and go over and get it, or would be playing wiffle ball out in the street, and the ball would go up on top of their roof, and we'd have to go over and knock on the door and get these 70-year-old people up from their chair, and they'd come to the door and take us upstairs to the bedroom and open the bedroom window and let us go out on the rooftop, pick up the ball and come down and probably be right back there 6 minutes later with the same damn thing. They just did this endlessly, never said a word about it. It's kind of a public service that the Russells ran. I'm not sure exactly what effect those people had on me, but obviously they've had an effect. I don't know, maybe I could have an effect on a kid. Maybe you could have an effect on a kid. I don't know. I have to think about that. Hey, I don't know. Maybe if I got around to meeting my neighbors, you know? Maybe that would help. Who knows? Maybe there's a modern-day Mr. and Mrs. Russell living on my very own block. Or maybe there's a little kid that would, you know, find a 43-year-old dude kind of fun to hang around with. You know, that I don't collect coins anymore, but I do have a computer, and I know a couple of disc jockeys. Didn't go through the Depression, but I did go through the 60s. I could tell them about that, I guess. But, you know, hell, I don't know how long I'm going to be there, man. It's only a 1-year lease. It's 3 or 4 months into it. Things happen in my... God, just this week, something weird happened in Miami. I don't know. Maybe they'll be calling me down there and offering me a hell of a lot more money. I'll be in Miami next week. Who knows? Go through all that trouble of meeting people, and, you have to move away, or they move away. Maybe they're not nice people. Maybe I don't have anything in common with them anyway. So maybe it would help, maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. Because I'll have to think about that, too. I don't know, maybe if I didn't glorify things like professional wrestling so much, you know? But, come on. Some of that stuff's really funny. Some of that stuff's really clever. And besides, it's great shtick. Helps me relate with some of the audience. People that wouldn't call otherwise, like, on a topic like this. But we'll call when we're talking about Andre the Giant or something like that. And it does help with the numbers. And the numbers help keep the family in beans and the car part and Lincolns and that kind of stuff. And beside, I like Gordon Soley. And I like Macho Man. He's a great guest, a fantastic guest. And he's even a pretty neat guy in person. I don't know, maybe if I got out more often. Got out and about or returned phone calls, or maybe if I was polite to some poor soul who does manage to get through to me at about 10 minutes to 12. But, come on. Hey, I need my space, I'm an artist. And I need to shelter myself from mere mortals out there. You guys understand that, don't you? Well, you need your space too, right? I don't know. I don't know what would help. But I'm as convinced can be. Not because we're rude to each other. Because we all need our space. Because we all try to justify whatever it is that we're into. Because we don't take the time and the trouble to get involved. Because all we usually do is just spout off a lot of hot air, myself included, thank you. And never seem to get around to taking care of things, never seem to get around to doing things that are important. Suppose if I went out and found that young kid that would, kind of look at me like Mr. Russell, the way I used to look at Mr. Russell, maybe that kid wouldn't sit home in the afternoon watching MTV or something, and watch Motley Crue and become somehow influenced by... Nah, it's kind of silly, huh? Come on, I'm just one guy. What can I do? And I work hard, By the time I get out of here, it's 3:30, 4 o'clock. I want to go home and blot out the world. Do you realize what kind of pressure I'm under? Do you have any idea at all? It's okay for me to go home and do drugs. Okay, all I do is alcohol anymore. I thought about doing marijuana again, because alcohol, I don't know. It is addictive and does eat your brain up and kind of fools around with your liver and stuff. I did think about doing some grass again to help blot out the world, but that stuff's illegal and I've got too much going for me. I have too much going for me. I can't take a chance like that. But it's okay for me to blot out the world, you see. It's you. You're the one who's not supposed to blot out the world with whatever your drug of choice is. I mean, you don't have my problems, man. You don't know what it's like. Day in and day out, about 8:30 every morning, you sit there saying, oh, my God, what am I going to talk about for 3 hours? I mean, you don't know what it's like. I mean, I need this. I deserve this. You don't know what it's like. I mean, you don't know what the pressure is. If everything falls just right, if everything goes... Do you know I'm going to do $250,000 next year? Do you know what kind of pressure that is? And if everything doesn't go just right, God, I might fall back to 70 or 80. That's pressure. I need to blot out that kind of pressure. I'm entitled to it. Instead of going around talking to kids and calling up the cable company and telling them to come take it out. That's the kind of stuff you should do, right? Kind of stuff that you should do. You should be the one getting involved. Damn, if I'm going to call you mister. Or Mrs. Miserable old bags. Right? Isn't that the way it is? I think so. I think so. Well, it sure is a mess out there, that's for sure. It ain't going to get no better, that's for sure. But I am reasonably convinced that all these little things that you do and that I do, at least indirectly, all end up causing people to go out and rob graves and rape 15-year-old daughters and throw stones at each other. Really does all add up. But damn, it's just so much trouble to go back to the way it used to be, and all the things you'd have to give up. Your own space, your own head, your time. It's probably not worth it. I don't know. What do you guys think, huh? What do you guys think would help to clean up this mess that we've created for ourselves? 1:31 the time. Michael, get on, Mike, if you would a second. I'm just curious as all hell. Went through a flurry of about 5, 6, 7 calls there. What was that all about?
One was someone who screamed an obscenity on the phone. Another one just hung up, screamed something at me and hung up. I don't even know what it was. Mm-hmm. Someone called up and was ready to put her through, and she said someone was peering in her window at her.
Oh.
That she'd call back
okay.
if she could.
If she could, yeah. Okay, Bob in Clearwater. Bob, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Bob Lassiter.
Yeah.
If I was your boss, I would give you a $100 bonus today so you could take your wife out for a good dinner.
Well, why is that, sir?
You did a terrific job on your monologue today.
No, that's what I get paid to do, sir.
Well, I mean, you did an outstanding job. I couldn't believe it's the same Bob Lassiter. I mean, you did a real good job today, Bob.
I don't know that I've said anything different than I've ever said before.
No, I mean, today you touched home. You touched home today. You did a real good job.
Okay, thanks ever so much.
Double shot of whiskey for your health.
Okay,
Take care.
Do that. Be good. Eric in St. Petersburg. Eric, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yeah, one of the things that I think would really help is to have more chat with Bob.
Well, okay, tell you what, young fella, you're going to get what you asked for. It is 1:32 in the afternoon. I'll be damned if I'm going to make my producer sit there and listen to obscenities. We'll just take it right off the air. You guys got the phone numbers? It is Chat with Bob. Hi, you want to chat with Bob? Hello? Oh, I guess they chickened out. Oh, there's another one. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi. When's the bastard leaving? He's done. And you're a shit-ass.
Hi, you're on the air. Michael, I think I blew that and put it on Channel B inadvertently. Okay, hi, you're on the air. Hello. Okay, such is life. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, Bob. This is Roland from Clearwater.
Yeah.
I didn't get to hear the first hour of what you're talking about, but I was moved by what you were saying about Mr. Russell next door.
Yeah, he's a nice old dude.
I wish more people would treat people like that. I know that a lot of people, like I argue with you about politics and everything, but that story about Mr. Russell really moved me.
Great.
And I just want you to know that, Bob.
Thank you.
All right.
Be good. Hello.
Yeah, it's me, and I'd like to chat with my friend Bob.
I don't think you have a friend named Bob. Hello. Hello. Once, twice. Gone forever. Hello. Oh, they hung up just as I was about to answer. Hello.
You big, fat pig.
Is that about it? Oh, he's listening to himself on the radio. It's the thrill of his lifetime. Hello.
Yes, Bob.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
Fine.
Been a long time since chat with Bob. I thought you were going to bring that back. They really got you today, huh, Bob?
No.
Hey, Bob.
No, sir. I'm very confident, very, very secure in my beliefs.
You're a good American, Bob.
No, I'm not, sir. I'm just like you. Hello. Hello there.
Hi.
Hi.
Did we move to chat with Bob since I went outside and came back in?
Yep.
Bob. Hello, this is Jenny.
Hi, Jenny.
Sorry, I missed that. I thought we were talking about the good old days.
No, I was.
Yeah, well, you were. You said, what can we do to improve things? And one of the things that I heard was when I took my little boys to their Cub Scout meetings is that they are desperate for adults to help them out with as den leaders.
Yeah, they almost always are.
Yeah, and it's really a shame because that's one place where we can really teach the kids a little bit of pride in themselves and their achievements. And, there's a lot of need for adults to get involved.
Sure is.
Well, that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Hello. Hello.
Hello?
Yep.
Is Bob Lassiter?
Yep.
Yes, Leonard here in St. Petersburg.
Great.
I heard your concern, and they are very reasonable concerns. And I, too, have been concerned just as you are.
Just some observations, sir, that's all.
Listen, 1 minute. Lawlessness seems to be the attitude of the day. Laws just like stealing, murder, covetousness, lying, adultery, fornication, all these things are lawlessness. And they seem to be increasing.
I don't know that fornication is lawlessness, sir.
Well,
may not be in the best interest of society.
Well, I'm talking about immoral.
I don't think,
Immoral sex.
Sir, immorality has very little to do with sex.
Well, let's say sexual immorality. There's clean sex and there's dirty sex. And separate the two. I call one immoral.
No, sir, I don't think there's any such thing as dirty sex. There's sex that sometimes is not responsible sex, but I don't think there's any dirty sex.
Well, let's call it irresponsible sex then.
Okay.
Okay. Covetousness. People, don't really respect other people's property, whether it's persons or material property.
Well, it seems to me, sir, that people don't respect other people.
And other people.
Yeah, like, for example, you're denouncing people for their dirty sex.
Well,
that's really up to them.
Do you agree with all forms of sex? Bestiality and so on?
Well, sir, I don't believe bestiality is sex. That's animal abuse.
Animal abuse? What
animal abuse, yeah.
Do
it's not sex,
they get sexual satisfaction from that?
Some people do, I suppose, but that's not sex.
That's the kind of thing that I'm denouncing, sir.
Oh, okay, great.
Well, what I'm trying to base these actions on, anti-laws. People are not...
Sir, I don't believe you heard a damn word I said. You see, you're coming on and you're doing what everybody else does. You're blaming everybody else, and, sir, the problem that lies right at your feet, man.
Right at my feet, it's true.
You better believe it. It's right at your feet.
Well, that's true.
So why the hell don't you start taking some responsibility for what the hell's wrong with it instead of sitting there pompously criticizing other people?
It's all our problems, sir. And until we reverse...
I know, until you straighten out other people, we're going to have problems. Get off my phone. I don't need it. Hello. Hello. Ah, pity poo. Hello.
Hello, Miss Lassiter?
Yeah.
I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. When I heard your monologue, I constantly listened to you. It's kind of ironic that although I'm in my early 30s, the things that you said I can relate to. Also, being alumni of the infamous black male fraternity, some of the things that I think that happen or that cause the thing, is dealing with the moral tone.
Well, you know, the black people, I'm glad you called, I really am. The black people take a well-deserved hit in terms of criticism when people say that more black people should stay in the black community. You know, those who have made well should stay behind and help other people. And that happens to be very true, by the way, my young friend. But it also goes both ways, because the white community is now doing the same damn thing, running away. As soon as they got it made, away they go.
Yeah, I understand that, but by you saying that you're getting into a catch-22. Just like with election, if you have ideals about promoting the nation as a whole and what the nation ought to go to, as opposed to if it's abandoning some of the social issues that you ought to be dealing with within your own community, rather not to vote on the thing that's good of the country or as a whole, or rather not to abandon those things that are best for your community. When I say your community, I mean, editorially speaking, I mean the black community. Such as when I hear different topics about what we should be dealing with, foreign policies and the economy and all that sort of thing, in my opinion, I think we cannot do anything unless some of the social issues, such as drugs in our community, and the attitude that we have about that.
Just the attitude that we have against one another as well. Foreign policy is important. The world is important, but it's not nearly as important as what in the hell's going on in my own backyard.
Exactly. That's my whole point. I don't understand that, and I don't know if you have on a national level, when you have the moral tone set on dealing with some other things as opposed to some of the social conditions, where do we take our cue from? How do we act on that? And particularly, again, being a black male, if I think that the majority of the people are thinking on something else as opposed to what I think is important and what I think we ought to be doing, and then you walk around with sort of a chip on your shoulder about thinking conservatism is synonymous with racism, for lack of a better term, and that's what a lot of us may feel sometimes, which may not be true, but simply because you have a different choice on a different priority list, what you think where you think we ought to be headed for. I don't know if the big problem is so much as leaving the community and not return to about and participating with the community. I don't know if that's one of the things that contribute to the problem. I think within our community, a lot of the younger people has a lot of don't give a hoot attitude about things.
So I think a lot of the middle-aged people and a lot of the elderly people have the exact same attitude. You say that you don't know that leaving the community or not leaving the community is important. I would point out to you that had Mr. and Mrs. Russell retired to Sarasota, I would have never met them.
I don't understand your point there. I'm saying,
I think it's very important that a community be fully represented in terms of society. It should be fully represented with the young. It should be represented with the middle class, the upper class, the lower class, the elderly. A community should be just that, a community, a little microcosm, if you will, of society, as opposed to what we are now doing with ourselves today and building ghettos, rich ghettos, poor ghettos, and between ghettos.
Yes, I agree with you there, but my point of it is that if I lived in the projects and if I made it, I don't know, or within a low-income neighborhood, I don't know if it'd be to my advantage to stay there just to be a quote-unquote a role model to inspire some other folks to get out of that particular area to move on. I think I think you guys, when I say you, I'm saying white, usually think that if you were in a ghetto that things are really, well, I'm in the early 30s. When I was younger, I didn't know that I was for. I didn't know things were real bad until I had another measuring tool to compare it to.
That's right.
So I didn't know. So I was assuming if you're brought up in the area that things are tough for you by our standards, if you don't have anything else to compare to, how else?
Real easy for me to tell you to stay put, isn't it?
Say again?
And it's real easy for me to tell you to stay put. I didn't.
Right. Exactly. So I don't understand that, and I don't have it.
Well, you see, that's the whole point. Both sides of the argument are valid. There is no right answer. There is no wrong answer. You're right, I'm right, and we're both wrong. That's the whole point. There are no easy answers.
I agree with that.
It's changing, man, and I don't know how it's ever going to go back. I don't know that we can do anything other than learn to adjust and live with whatever kind of a mess that we have.
And as far as adjusting, how do you? I think where we start with that is send some type of more tone on the national level, and I don't think that as such right now.
Well, you won't get any moral tone on the national level, my friend, until you have a moral tone on the local level. Because it's the local level that dictates the national level.
I agree. Let's bring it down on the local level. I don't think we have a moral tone on the local level, and that conveys over to attitudes with the animosity between groups of people, polarized groups of people, in my opinion.
My friend, I thank you for that opinion.
Thank you.
Be good.
I just kind of wanted to address a little bit off the subject you were just speaking on. My mother lives in a very nice neighborhood, not very nice, fairly nice, older home neighborhood in St. Petersburg. Mm-hmm. And a man went into the neighborhood and bought up 5 of the homes there. It was a very peaceful, quiet neighborhood. Now he rents those homes out through HUD. Subsequently, HUD puts a lot of, they've all been black families into these homes. Mm-hmm. Now they have their license plates stolen, their cars broken into, and their stereos stolen. My mother's next-door neighbor had one of the black men from the HUD housing arrested for attempted battery. He had a 6-foot stick that he was going to beat the guy up for. The white man got upset because there was a big old lady in this car honking her horn saying, come on, 6:30 in the morning. Then the man that wouldn't get up off his butt and come out to the car comes out threatening to hurt him because the guy asked her to be quiet. He had little children sleeping. And, that's a kind of situation where it seems like they want to have a superior feeling, and rule over
Did you say they?
Huh?
Did you say they?
They, the people that have moved into these homes, yes. Mm-hmm. So, and it's a situation where now I'm a fairly liberal.
Well, most people tend to react rather negatively when, it's us and them. John in St. Petersburg. John, you're on the air, 970 WFLA.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, I think God is the answer to all these problems.
Oh. Funny, people seem to be more religious today than they were back then.
I don't think they are more, they had more... They had more religious people, yes, like the man that you spoke about early on.
Like Mr. Russell?
Mr. Russell.
I don't ever recall Mr. Russell going to a church service, sir. I never saw a Bible in his house. I never saw a Bible in his house. I never saw a crucifix, a picture of Jesus, Buddha, or anybody else.
That is it, sir. That's true.
Never spoke of God, ever.
You don't have to go to church to be religious. Or to have
no, sir, but you have to be religious, and Mr. Russell wasn't religious.
Well,
he was just a decent man, sir. Damn decent man.
Decency and religion, they both work hand in hand.
No, they don't, sir. Jimmy Swaggart.
He's a bad example.
Oh, bad example. Jerry Falwell.
Also another bad example?
Another bad example, I see. Well, I could sit here for the rest of the afternoon, sir, giving you bad examples.
What about Billy Graham?
Yeah, what about him, sir?
I didn't give you an example, sir. I'm giving you the answers. Lawlessness.
Oh, the answers. You're giving me the answers. I see.
If we obey the laws of the land, that contributes to respecting other people and their property.
No, sir. What you're talking about is if other people obey the law of the land, you'll have an easier time of it. And what I'm suggesting to you, sir, is that if we all treated each other as human beings, then we wouldn't have to worry about people obeying the law of the land quite as much as we do.
Well, that's the whole point, Bob.
Yeah, exactly, sir. It's the whole point.
Treating people
as human beings
means you don't steal, you don't murder, you don't kill, you don't covet, you don't do all these things.
No, sir. Don't steal, don't cheat, don't murder. They're just basic tenets.
Basic tenets.
What I'm talking about is treating people as individuals.
Right.
Treating people as you would have them treat you, which goes beyond cheating, robbing, and murdering.
But that's love, sir.
No, it's not love, sir. It's called decency. Charlie Davis standing by with the WFLA News Brief. Charlie, 1:53 the time. Joe in Clearwater. Joe, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to have a chat with Bob.
Yeah, that's what we're having.
Yeah? I want you, man.
I'll bet you do.
I want to do it to you, man.
I'll bet you do.
Bend over, Bob.
Yeah, no, it's the other way around, Joe. Tim in Tampa, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Is that you, Bob?
Yup.
How you doing, man?
Fine.
I'm a long-time listener from you from way back. I just got back in Tampa, and I want you to know you brought me out a little bit of depression today. It's great hearing your voice, it really is. And I call you by pure chance, when I was listening to the radio. I almost met you once, I came very close because mine and your views are pretty much alike. My little bit of wisdom that I'm hoping I can bring out today, though, is did you catch that Jack Anderson is doing that thing on the Kennedy assassination tonight?
Hi, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hi, yeah, I'd like to make a comment to Bob.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm on the air. Oh, hi, Bob.
Yeah. Hi.
I just wanted to give you two quick examples of manifestations of what you've been talking about. Halloween night, my son wanted to go trick-or-treating with a friend, and so we told him to go ahead and call.
Physical and geographical. Just let me give you a handful of very small, examples, excuse me. When you were growing up, you didn't... If you shopped at Jack Eckert's drugstore, Jack Eckert ran it. Jack Eckert knew you. Jack Eckert knew your parents. Jack Eckert would put up with you coming in after school and sitting at the soda fountain for an hour and a half.
I want to sit down and meet Mr. McDonald.
Spending a nickel on a soda because, and your parents put up with it because at least Jack was watching you, for God's sake. Mm-hmm. And Jack put up with it because your parents did business with him.
And now they're wondering if Jack is maybe got a sexual perversion towards children now. Nobody trusts nobody. I mean, just like that one lady said.
How can you trust people you don't know, Joe? That's only normal human nature. You don't trust what you don't know. And we have all put ourselves in a position not to know anything or anybody.
All right, so but I don't want to lump myself into that category, though, because I'm really not like that.
But you are. You've been sucked into it. You're part of it, too. You've been sucked into it against your will. Who owns the drugstore, Joe?
Mr. Eckert.
Nah, he sold his stock. They just kept his name. They bought his name.
No, I was being facetious. Who knows who Mr. Eckert is?
Well, a couple of years ago, you would have been right.
Right, well.
But you never met Mr. Eckert in the drugstore.
No, sure haven't. It's funny you should bring that up because where I grew up, there was a little drugstore, and it had a man in there, Mr. Schutzbank. It was his drugstore. That's all he did all his life. And, whenever anything used to happen in our neighborhood, you fall down and cut your leg, your parents would say, go run over to Mr. Schutzbank, run over to Mr. Schutzbank. And no matter what he was doing, he'd take you in the back, he'd bandage up your leg, and, he wouldn't charge you nothing. That's where everybody, ran to get taken care of. Now, they're afraid of malpractice. They don't have time, and maybe it's because the way things are today, as far as you have to work so hard and things are so costly that we're forced not to have time. Could that be?
Well, I don't know. My father worked 2 jobs when I was young. Most dads did, I shouldn't say most dads, but a lot of dads did.
Yeah,
and, women had to wash clothes damn near by hand and iron them damn near by hand, and preparing dinner took a lot more time.
Was his house a couple of years' worth of income, like you were talking about the other day?
No, it was about 1 year's worth.
But, I don't know.
No, actually, it was a half a year's worth. They paid $2,200 for it, and he earned $100 a week. So it was half a year's net income. That's what he paid for the house.
Well, I'm sure trying, and I'd like to see more people do it, and I really enjoyed your monologue, Bob.
Thank you, Joe. Take care. Hi, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yeah. How's it going, Bob?
Fine.
You're chatting with Bob today, huh?
No, sir, you are. Hi, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yeah, and
God,
I wanted to talk about, I wanted to talk about yeah. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, it is. This is Bob. Mr. Lassiter, yes, it is. I just want to talk about
Haven't you ever had an original thought in your entire life? Ever?
No. Yeah, I just wanted to say,
Nothing?
Oh,
nothing you ever thought of on your own first?
Original ideas?
Yes, I do. I think I'll go on to somebody else. Hi, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Mr. Lassiter.
Yeah.
This is the Chat with Slav show.
Uh-huh.
Oh, how are you doing there, Bob? Did you enjoy that sandwich you just ate?
Yes, I did. I only ate half of it, thank you.
Your big fat lips on it.
No, you didn't. I ate it during the newscast an hour ago.
No, I can smell it on you, you pig.
Oh. Hi, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that other guy. Where all these people come from with a nice, serious show like you're trying to have here today?
Life, sir. Just come from life.
Just from life. Well, Bob?
Yes, sir.
You know, what you were talking about before about the neighbors and everything like that, it's so true. We just really don't take the time anymore. I think that's the important thing. I think the old folks, Sun City, they're...
So I'm not so sure that we, went out of our way to take the time before. I think one of the points I was trying to make is that we were forced by circumstances. When I talked about, for example, the girls in high school being banished as soon as they got pregnant, they didn't do that because they wanted to. They were forced to do it.
Yeah.
When I talked about, paying your bill at the grocery store or whatever it might have been, you were forced to do so because if you didn't, everybody in the community knew about it.
Yeah, that's true.
And people shunned you to one degree or another.
Seems like now the community moves away. I mean, you look down at Sun City Center; it represents the whole country down there.
Filled with Mr. and Mrs. Russells. Filled with them.
All the knowledge and experience down there. It's amazing.
It's tragic.
Yeah, that's the word.
I mean, everywhere you go, it's a ghetto. You got young ghettos, you got old ghettos, you got middle-aged ghettos, you got rich ghettos, you got middle-income ghettos, you got poor ghettos. There are virtually no more communities left. There are only ghettos.
I think that's the major thing right there. I can't see any point in the old folk. I hate to keep calling them that, but all the knowledge and then they move away. They're gone and they don't pass it on to the.
Well, what about the young folk who gather knowledge or gather wealth or whatever it might be? They got to move away too. My block, I think, is filled with basically 30 to 50-year-old people. I think. I must admit, I've never walked on it.
I don't know. I've been shaking my head about it for, quite a while, and then I heard you talking about it today. It's, it seems like kids and us, you don't get to know the senior citizens like you used to. Like the people that lived down the street and up the corner, and you knew who they were and what was happening to them, and people...
Because you're not forced to, sir.
Yeah.
We didn't do these things because we wanted to. We did them because we were forced to do them, and maybe things would be a little bit better if we could figure out a way again to force people.
I don't know how, unless you move down to Sunset. Well, that wouldn't work, I guess. That's...
Oh, I beg your pardon. It does work in places like that. It does work. Because it's, while it's a segregated community and while it is a ghetto, it is still a place where image matters because people live in such close proximity.
Mm-hmm.
There are still such things as scandals. And...
Well,
I don't know. Yeah, we are all animals to a degree, and the only thing that really keeps us in line is fear of some kind of punishment or fear of some type of retribution or scandal. Well, now most of us don't have that fear anymore.
That's true. There was an article in Parade Magazine about the Chinese people, how they solve a lot of their correctional problems by bringing the family to the prison to embarrass the inmates. I mean, but, that wouldn't work here. They don't know where the family is, and how would that possibly embarrass them? I mean, it's like the whole structure is just kind of...
Yeah, I remember the article. There have been a couple of television shows, actually, on the precise same thing, the Chinese criminal justice system.
It works there. It couldn't possibly work here.
No way.
They'd laugh in their face. It just wouldn't...
Exactly.
Well, what can you do, Bob?
I don't know.
Hey, you're trying.
Maybe.
Hey, I'm not a big Michael Jackson fan, but like it said in the song, it starts with the man in the mirror, I guess.
Doesn't it ever?
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks, Bob.
Did I take my 20 break? I didn't. Well, let's do it now. Hi, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yes, I'm calling to talk to Bob about the subject.
Well, go right ahead. You're on the air.
Hello, I'm sorry.
I said go ahead. You're on the air for the moment anyway.
I'm sorry. I've never called before. I was really touched by what you had been talking about, the loss of the sense of community. I feel that loss, too. I'm not too far from your age. I was born in 1950 and grew up in a small town in Iowa where the community was self-contained and represented several different elements. And I think as I've grown up, that community, which was fairly well balanced, has been replaced by false community. And I'm talking about how we have compartmentalized ourselves. For example, we define our roles. We define ourselves by our roles. We're lawyers, or we're religious people who are maybe fanatical about it, maybe not. We're party animals, but we fit into some sort of compartment. And in that kind of one-dimensional way, we replace our old, broader community with this new community, what I call a false community.
Well, there are two other things that are also missing besides the sense of community, and they would be a sense of propriety and a sense of discipline. You know, I mentioned in my monologue, I'll be damned if I'm going to call my boss Mr. Maseko. I mean, you know, that would be positioning myself incorrectly with him. And I bet that he won't call me Mr. Lassiter for the very same reason. It would be, you know, giving the wrong message. It would be giving me one up. Well, that's all that any of us are really concerned with anymore is positioning. Little things that I spoke of, teaching kids to stand up in the classroom when an adult walks in, calling people who are older than you Mr. or Mrs. or Miss, as the case may be. All tiny, tiny little things, none of them in and of themselves important, but when lumped together, wow.
Yeah, that's true. I find also, having gone through the late 60s, being in college at that point, I was greatly influenced before that time to have a lot of respect for authority figures and to defer to authority figures. When I went through college in the late 60s, it became a badge of honor to find the differences, reject the authority figures, define myself in very dramatic ways as being different from everybody else. And to a certain extent, I find that to be exhilarating and good and the basis for a lot of creativity and self-expression.
Well, exactly. Here's the gripe. Most of those authority figures did not deserve, personally, any respect. They deserved none individually.
Yeah.
But for the good of society,
That's right. That's right. But I just wanted to call because I have never been quite as touched as the word pictures that you drew for me. They created some word pictures in my own head. You were talking about your street, the setup of your row house, et cetera, et cetera.
35 years later, I remember their names. I remember what they did for a living.
And I imagine you can close your eyes. Maybe you don't even need to close your eyes and go back to that place in your head and have that same feeling created for yourself.
It is the only sense of community I have.
And likewise for me, the word picture that you painted for yourself triggered one in my own mind where I was thinking about the sidewalks that I used to travel on as a child. We don't have sidewalks anymore for children. There are just no sidewalks in any subdivisions around here.
Well, let me share something with you. I don't think I've ever mentioned this out loud, maybe to my wife, although I wouldn't even swear to that. I come from the Philadelphia area, okay? I haven't lived there for over 20 years, but I still consider it my home because it's the only home I know. Since then, I've lived in 17 or 18 different cities. And I sometimes fantasize about going home to work. But I'll tell you this, I couldn't do it. I could not sit on the airwaves in Philadelphia and talk the way I talk, say the things I say, because somebody might recognize my voice. Somebody might know my family. I would embarrass them.
That's right. That's why.
Isn't that incredible?
It is, but that's why it's difficult also to go back to your 20th high school reunion and feel that you can be yourself. I had that experience this summer going back to a 20th high school reunion, and when I went back, I sort of felt pressured to crawl back into my own little compartment that had been assigned to me. I talked about compartmentalization earlier. I felt compelled to do that, forced to do that, because everybody expected it of me, and for them to look at Sarah and see somebody who is new and different would be somewhat, I guess, painful for myself.
I don't know, I would assume that you're not displeased with yourself. You're not ashamed of yourself, are you?
Of course not.
I'm not ashamed of myself or my views or how I conduct myself. But, you know, there would be that extra added pressure at home, you know, oh, geez, well, there's, you know, Aunt Kate, God, I don't know, and Uncle Joe, and gee, Willikers, Uncle Jack believes, I couldn't say that.
Exactly.
It's discipline.
Exactly.
I don't have to worry about offending anybody here.
No, I think that the woman that made a point earlier, I don't remember her name, about just setting an example for children. It's a very simple thing to say, but it does ring true. That's about all you can do, is set an example for your children to show that you are more than one-dimensional. You are not just a lawyer. You are not just a talk show person. You are not just a religious fanatic. You are not just defining yourself in one way. You are defining yourself in a multi-dimensional way. And set that example for them, and hopefully that they can be broader than the way we are feeling pushed into our compartments now.
Well, unfortunately, Renaissance men and Renaissance women are out of vogue these days.
That's
got to be a specialist, even if it's a specialist, you specialize in just being a bigot or something, anything.
That's true, and if you care about other people around you, your neighbors, people you work with, then you're accused of having a social work mentality and sort of dismissed as a foolish person that can't deal with the real world and getting ahead.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Be good. Bo in Tampa. Bo, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hi, Bob. How you doing?
Fine, thank you.
The topic you touched on today really has made me think a lot. It's something that I think about quite often from time to time. And just yesterday I was kind of musing over it as a matter of fact. It seems so ironic that with all of the modern advancements in technology and communication that man has achieved in this day and age, that it seems like it's almost had a reverse effect in that it has resulted in the virtual isolation of everyone from one another. It's like it's almost an innate human quality to reverse and have some kind of radical motivation to go the other way. In other words, when you have all this communication and openness thrust upon you, all of a sudden you want to revert and you want to draw into your individualism so much that you quit talking and expressing yourself with other people openly, and you're afraid to because of what they may think or whatnot.
Unless, you get on the phone and call up a talk radio show, then you can say the most outrageous things in the world.
That's true. That's very true. But I think for a lot of people, that's very difficult to do. Very difficult to find. It's almost find the courage in themselves to call up and express that. Which seems very strange. We're in a country that says, hey, come on, express your views, be open and whatnot, but yet so many people that I talk to are afraid to do that. And I know I'm afraid to do it to an extent about why people will think and what people will think because of what you have to say. But I was speaking yesterday with an interesting guy that was from Czechoslovakia. He came to this country about 2 years ago, and I asked him what he likes about this country and does he like this country. And in fact, he told me that, yes, he does like the country, but the thing that really bothers him here is that there's too much freedom, almost.
I know what you're saying. Maybe on another day I'd rip you to shreds on such a statement, but in essence, I know what you're saying.
It's quite a double-edged sword for me, too, because I'm a very liberal type person.
Yeah, I'm not going to give up any of it, but I agree with you. We have too much, but I'm not going to give up an ounce of it.
Exactly. It's a tough thing, but I don't know. It just almost boils down to the fact there's too much freedom and too little respect for one another individually, and it all boils down to a very dangerous situation. I think that's the thing. What you touched on in your monologue that got to me the most was the fact of the lack of respect for one another. It's just so evident today. And it's not just a respect for the people that are in a position above you, your elders or your boss or whatever, whereas that is important, but it's respect for everyone, the people that are below you and whatever. We're all human beings, and we all demand equal respect, I believe.
We should.
I think so.
Thank you, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Lou, somewhere around USF. Lou, you're on the air at 970 WFLA. Hi, Lou.
Bob?
Yeah.
This is Lou at USF.
USF, right.
Listen, I'm a sociologist, and I have a book in front of me, and I'm wondering if you're familiar with it. Talk Radio and the American Dream.
No, I've never heard of it.
Okay, it's written by Murray Levin, and he's a political scientist out of Boston University. And he analyzed 700 hours of tape from two New England talk radio shows, one conservative, the other liberal.
Probably, I would assume RKO, not Stevens, Williams, and, what's the other guy's name?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Can't think of his name. He used to work in Orlando. You know who I'm talking about, don't you, Mike? No, he can't think of his name either. Okay, that's beside the point.
Okay, anyway, this data was collected between 1977 and 1982. So roughly almost a decade ago. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a profile of the callers. And, well, he left out some of them, like the cretins that call in and make obscene noises.
I don't know. I think they should have been included. They're a very important element.
Yeah, I wonder where they come from.
All walks of life, sir.
Let me read this profile to you. I think it's interesting because it's a decade ago, and yet it hits the nail right on the head. And it'll just take a few seconds.
Go right ahead.
Okay, the talk is full of anger towards the politicians and parties and towards big business and labor. The lower middle class and proletariat callers who often make radio their private preserve despise social welfare, affirmative action, and secular humanism. But they also attribute many of the nation's ills to unrestrained self-interest and excessive materialism. They speak of their alienation and powerlessness, of the futility of voting, and of the corruption and unresponsiveness of politicians. They sense the disappearance of communal bonds and the decline of mutual aid. They speak of the maldistribution of social justice. The crisis for them is moral, not merely political. And then it goes on along in that vein.
Well, let me tell you about a book that also deals with talk radio. It has become not only a professional but a personal Bible for me. It's a book about a man who was shot, a talk radio host in Denver. The book is called Talked to Death.
Talked to Death?
Talked to Death. It's about Alan Berg.
Okay, I'm familiar
and
with
his
that.
murder. But in the course of an interview or some remembrances, I guess, of conversations with Alan Berg, he really summed it up. In essence, I guess what you're saying, but even more simple and easier to understand. And I preface what I'm about to tell you by first of all saying that if you're a talk show host, you consider yourself somehow to be not a mere mortal. This is a very, very unusual line of work. Believe me, it's unusual. And so therefore, I tend to put even more credence in what one of my colleagues says, of course, if I agree with my colleague. But what Berg said was that he lived in a country, judging from his calls, he lived in a country, and I've stolen this from him, I've said it a couple of times myself, where there are nothing but victims. No one is responsible for anything. Everybody's just a victim. A victim of this, a victim of that, a victim of the conservatives, a victim of the liberals, a victim of the Trilateral Commission, a victim of black people, a victim of Jews, a victim of WASPs.
All we have to do is listen to Dukakis and Bush.
Nobody is ever responsible for anything that goes wrong. And I'm sorry, the more I pick up the paper, the more I read about these hideous, fiendish acts committed every single day in every community in this country, I'm becoming more and more and more convinced that it is my fault, it's your fault, and it boils down to all these very simple little basic things that used to be part of life that no longer are.
Yeah, you're right. There's another book done by a sociologist, a very famous, Peter Berg, called The Homeless Mind. And the young lady who called a little while ago talked about compartmentalization.
Mm-hmm.
And basically his thesis is that in modern technocratic society, we live in compartmentalized world. That is, we move from one social space to another social space, and these spaces are not interconnected. And in each space, we have a different identity. And hence the title of his book, The Homeless Mind, no place for the mind or the self to settle in.
Well, the house that I live in, you know, again, I speak in terms of some of the physical changes that we've made. The house that I live in, the block that I live on, virtually every house on that block is staggered. So that when I walk out my front door, there is utterly no danger whatsoever that I will be walking out at the exact same time as my neighbor and have to confront him. My house is set up with lots and lots of windows. None of those windows look onto another house. And the one that does has a great big fence in between my house and the next house. I might also point out that the other two houses are set up the same way. I live in relatively close proximity. I suppose there's about maybe 20 feet on one side and maybe 15 feet on the other side of my two neighbors. I live on a 75-foot lot. And yet the houses are designed so that we don't see each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's the American dream.
How old are they?
My house is 4 years old. The other house on the right of me is maybe about the same age. The house on the left is much older. It's maybe 30 or 40 years old.
Okay.
But has been totally redesigned.
I live in a neighborhood that's in what is now called Old Carrollwood, which is about 25 or 30 years old. And you talked about ghettos. When we came here 22 years ago, we lived in Minneapolis. I was in graduate school, and we lived in a highly integrated low-income housing area, right next to a federal low-income housing area. And it was a great deal, believe it or not, a great deal of community spirit there. And again, highly interracial.
Had to be, because you guys didn't know if you were ever going to get out.
Right. Somebody asked if I was afraid to let my wife walk the streets after dark, and I said, not in this neighborhood, because if she yelled, somebody would be there. Anyway.
Somebody would have recognized her voice.
Probably, yeah. Anyway, we came here and moved into Old Carrollwood, and don't get me wrong, I really enjoy the neighborhood. It's a nice community. But after being here about a year and a half and realizing what my kids were no longer experiencing, I called it a golden ghetto. Because we no longer had the interracial or interclass contacts that we had in that old neighborhood in Minneapolis.
Well, that's exactly what I live in, and I pay a fortune to live there.
Well, so do I. One of the, I can recall just a quick anecdote, and then I'll let you go. Shortly after we moved in, and we loved living in a house instead of an apartment. This was great. And my son was restless, and I told him to take his construction toys outside and play with them. And he took them outside, and he came back in about 5 or 10 minutes, and he said he can't do that. And I said, what's the matter? And he said, there's no dirt. I said, what do you mean there's no dirt? He said, there's no dirt, it's all grass. And I went out in this beautiful manicured yard and realized there was no dirt.
Yep.
So I got a shovel and I dug up about a 6x10 piece of my lawn, and I said, now you got dirt.
Sound like a good daddy to me. Before you go, one quick yes or no answer. Professional opinion, is it going to get better?
You know, if I had an answer to that, I'd have an endowed chair at Harvard. Yeah, it's got to get better.
But is it going to? I know it has to, but is it going to? I don't think it is.
I think so. Some of the legislation that came out of the 60s, the little old lady in tennis shoes who says you can't legislate morality is absolutely right. You can't. But what you can do is legislate ways in which people come together.
Well,
it's one of the things I'd love to see is an absolute enforcement of fair housing.
Well, I agree. You can't legislate morality. That's a very foolish thing to try to do. But there is another way. You can force morality on people.
Well, you can force people to meet in ways they have never met before, in the workplace, in the school, in the neighborhoods. And once they do that, a lot of the old stereotypes, a lot of the old myths fall apart when faced with reality. I mean, if you're forced to work with somebody as a peer that you have in the past defined as an inferior, and then you discover all those thoughts that you've had in the past are simply not true, you're going to have to revise your opinion because you can't live with that kind of a contradiction.
My friend, thank you.
Thank you.
Be good, Lou.
Bye-bye.
Everybody has the need of an attorney every now and then, okay? So should we all laugh at attorneys? Ha, 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 ha. But hey, when you need one, it's not a laughing matter.
Both available at...
Curtis in Tampa. Curtis, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Nice show today, Bob. I really enjoyed your monologue earlier.
Thank you.
I found it difficult to even get my work done, as a matter of fact, but I almost left feeling more confused than before, and it's a subject I think a lot about.
Hey, you can imagine how confused I am from the time that I conceived it this morning to the time I finished delivering it.
Really? I think you brought out a lot of interesting points, but I would disagree with the rosy kind of picture you did paint of days gone by.
Oh, wait a second. Maybe it slipped past you, but I also pointed out that those were the days of horrible political witch hunts. Those were the days of segregation. Those were the days... I mean, I was ostracized because I was the child of a divorced woman in a Protestant town. I mean, you know, I'm not painting them as perfect times. All I was... The connection I was trying to make is that there seemed to have been more self-discipline. People seemed to have a little... You know, we had crooks, but we didn't have fiends. Today we have fiends. You know, I'll settle for crooks.
But I'm wondering if it's because we had picked an in-group and an out-group, and our frustrations, instead of being towards all of us, were towards some of us. I know that's not very clear, but even with the racism and sexism you just mentioned... And when you talk about growing up in a tight community, I did myself, though I'm younger than you. When I got, you know, and I certainly appreciate that, and I hope someday when I have children that I'm going to be able to provide them something like that kind of cohesive neighborhood that I was able to grow up in.
Okay, Curtis, you see, this is what I'm about to tell you is what tears me apart. I grew up in a beautiful, beautiful suburban town, Curtis. There was no anti-Semitism because there weren't any synagogues to desecrate. There weren't any Jews. There were no integration problems because there weren't any black people.
Right.
There were no problems because there weren't any problems. That's the whole point. It was an isolated little community. All the people were the same, primarily. Same roughly education, same roughly financial backgrounds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it worked. It worked incredibly well. That tears me to shreds, Curtis, because I know it worked. And yet, it wasn't really fair. See what I mean?
Yeah, I know, and it's give and take. It's something I have to worry about because I grew up in a very nice neighborhood like that as well.
Right, Mommy's didn't work.
Well, when I got older, I realized my neighborhood was that way because they legally set it up so blacks couldn't move in there in a big way, and blacks couldn't take advantage of the wealth that community was enjoying.
But there were other things, too, in addition to the lack of some problems. There was a social structure enforced. There was great discipline enforced. You know, when I talk about standing up when the nun walked into the room, that's for sure, man.
Right.
That was a hell of a lot more important than passing the spelling test. A hell of a lot more important. And you know, Curtis, I'm not totally convinced that it wasn't really more important in the long run.
I know what you mean, because I've changed my mind a lot. I used to, I don't know, I heard a lady call up before and say, you know, it's the values have to be instilled in the home. And I hear you say, oh, well, that's real radical. I felt the same way. But when you think about it, I grew up with that respect, mainly out of fear to disappoint my family, fear to disappoint my neighbors who would tell my family.
Did you hear what I said about working in Philadelphia?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean it. That's not a bull. That's not an exaggeration.
Exactly.
I've never applied for a gig in Philadelphia. I never will.
But as I got older, again, I realized some teachers didn't deserve respect. And
as individuals, no, they didn't. But as what they are, yeah, they do.
Yeah, exactly. But they had lost my respect, so I didn't treat them with any. And I don't know. It's such a complicated topic, because I feel that you know, a lot of the problems. My wife works with kids from the inner city, from College Hills and these places, and it is so complicated that I can't pretend to tell her what the problem is or anything. And she doesn't have a lot of answers to it.
Well, Curtis, just rest assured that I'm not remembering with nothing but sunshine over my left shoulder. I'm remembering the bad parts, too.
Well, I just wanted to add that I think there are things that we can do. And beyond just being involved individually in different things, we have to be serious. And if we are serious about the crime problem, we have to be ready to restructure those ghettos, create jobs, create better education. And that goes beyond, you know, whether we're going to get enough people to ban MTV or something like that.
Curtis, I thank you much. Unfortunately, I do have to run. Don Richards is standing by with the WFLA News Brief. WFLA.
Hello, Bob.
Hi.
How you doing?
Fine.
I'd like to uncover a little can of worms here for you to work on, but it's a little late in the hour. I have two daughters that are pretty well set up. One's pushing 30, and the other one is just over 30. And neither of them are married, and they both have responsible jobs. One's an industrial psychologist. The other one's an air traffic controller making good money. And they just don't seem to be able to find anybody that's suitable to marry. And I've sort of made a study of this thing, and I begin to realize that every country that we've had any military problems with at all, we've left a tremendous amount of troops there. For example, Germany, we have some 60,000 of our boys over there. In Japan, maybe an equal number. And just about every country that we've ever had anything to do with, we've left boys there to watch the troops or something. I don't know what they're doing there, but for example, Germany, I'm sure those people don't need us to protect them. They were capable enough to scare the whole world at one time, so I'm sure they can take care of themselves. And same with Japan. They have tremendous amounts of our money that they could take care of themselves. And the Philippines, just anywhere we've ever had anybody, we've got troops there. So there's a tremendous shortage of young men that are suitable for marriage. And the ones that are back here are usually the crippled ones and ones that have psychological problems, etc. Now, I would like to see some of these ladies that are on the air all the time start studying this thing and find out why our troops are needed, where we certainly don't need to keep our young men over there and our own people, our own citizens, of the opportunities of getting married. Now, the only thing I can conclude from what little time I've had to study it is that we have a group of international carpetbaggers that stir up trouble all over the world, and then we go over there and maintain our troops there so that they can take over those other countries financially, and if they cause any trouble, our troops are there to quell it. So I think we're in an international carpetbagger society, and we're in real serious trouble. I'd like to see some of these young ladies that call in, and the older ones that seem to be quite smart, discuss this thing.
Yes, sir, we're in very serious trouble. Jeff on a car phone in Tampa. Jeff, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Oh, how you doing?
Fine. Now do you guys understand why I have to go home and get drunk every night, huh?
I've been listening since you came on today, and you had touched so many spots. I mean, You know, it started out last week with the Geraldo show. Seeing that and hearing about all this crap in the papers these last few days really, you know, shooken me up. And it sounds that I'm finally I'm not alone. There's other people that this bothers as well. And you were talking earlier about the kid that you looked up to, that older couple in Pennsylvania or wherever.
Yeah, the Russells.
Right. Well, I just want you to know that, you wish that people, you might have a kid that looks up to you. Put the mirror to the microphone, babe, because you got a ton of people that look up to you. And when you leave there today, hold your head up, because we need more people like you. And that's all I can say.
You're kind. Thank you, Jeffrey. Be good. Like I said, show basically, primarily the monologue, food for thought. Obviously, it fed some of you, and obviously a hell of a lot of you are still fasting. What can I say? Have a good one, huh?